Hello and welcome to the Randy Moon 50,000 subscriber special. Thank you to everyone who has helped get me to 50,000 subscribers. Crazy to me that I have reached this number. I never thought that I would ever get anywhere close to this, especially in the short amount of time that I have. And yeah, my shock sites video got to 1 million views, which is even more insane. That's like greater than the population of the city that I live in. So yeah, thank you. And today I thought we would mark the occasion by, last time we went through my Tumblr archive. So today I thought we would amp up the cringe a little bit more. We're going to read my old fan fictions together. Got 3 different fanfics from 3 different eras of my life, 3 different fandoms, and yeah, I thought it would be fun and funny to look back at them and see just how bad they were. I have a feeling this is going to be very painful for me. You all better share the fuck out of this video and get it to 1 bazillion views to compensate my therapy bills. Okay, so the first fanfiction that we are going to be reading together today is Cody Simpson RPF. If you don't know what RPF is, it stands for Real Person Fic. So it's just fanfic that it's about real people rather than fictional characters. It's a bit controversial among fanfiction enjoyers, but there have definitely been times in my life when I've been deep into RPF. And RPF was my gateway into fanfiction. Cody Simpson fanfiction was the first fanfiction I ever read and the first fanfiction I ever wrote. And this one I actually wrote by hand in this notebook here that I made a beautiful collage out of on the cover. Most of the stuff on here is Cody Simpson. So yeah, I would like write it by hand because I didn't have my own computer at the time. So I would like write it by hand in this notebook. And then when I was like allowed to use the family computer, then I would like type it up and I would post it. I would post it on Twitlonger, which if you remember what Twitlonger is, you absolutely qualify for a veterans discount. I never actually finished writing this fan fiction. I actually never finished writing most fan fictions that I started to write. Only one of the fan fictions that we're going to read today was completed because it was just a one-shot. I actually had never completed a multi-part fic until literally last year, but we're not going to be reading that one. So usually in RPF, it's either like the fan fiction is written from the point of view of either like a self-insert OC, or it's just like a Y/N type deal where like the reader is just supposed to imagine themselves in the fic. But I didn't do either one of those things in this fic. I straight up just had myself as the character in this fan fiction, and for some reason thought that other people were going to care enough about me to read this. I don't remember if anyone really read this when I posted it, because I only posted like a few chapters. And if anyone did read it, I don't remember what the reception to it was, but I don't think I cared. I was just doing this for myself. All right, anyways, without further ado, I guess let's just get into it. I'm gonna start at chapter 2 because chapter 1 is just kind of like setting things up and it's not that much happens. But basically the premise of this fan fiction was that I entered a contest where I would get to fly to LA and meet Cody Simpson and like spend 3 days with him or something. So in this chapter, we start with me finding out that I just won the contest. For a moment, I was in disbelief. Then my mouth dropped open and my eyes widened as it sunk in. I was going to LA to visit Cody Simpson, written in all caps. I immediately started screaming, crying, and jumping. Screaming, crying, throwing up and down. My parents came running into my room. What happened? My mom asked. I won the contest, I screamed. Also, the way that I wrote this with like no paragraphing. She then talked on the phone with John to go over some details while I kept repeating, oh my gosh, I can't believe I won. When my mom hung up, she said with a smile, looks like we're going to LA. A month and a bit later, I was standing in the local airport with my mom, clutching a heavy suitcase. I couldn't decide what to pack, so I just gave up and packed just about anything. The last few weeks had seemed to go by so slowly, and I had talked about the trip nonstop, but now the big day was finally here. When our flight was called, I squealed a little. "Calm down, sweetie," my mom laughed. My mom absolutely does not talk like that in real life. The entire plane ride, I couldn't sit still from excitement. As we arrived in LA, I couldn't help thinking things like, what will Cody be like? What if he doesn't like me? We got our luggage, and just then, a woman appeared out of the crowd and walked up to us. I don't know how she knew who we were, but okay. "Hi, I'm Jody from M Magazine." Like the video if you remember M Magazine. She said, shaking mine and my mother's hands. "You must be Randy, the winner of the Cody Simpson contest." I beamed and nodded. "Cody's just over here waiting for you." Okay, I love that he just came to the airport to meet us. Wow. Jody led us through the airport until I saw a tall, blonde-haired, aqua-eyed boy surrounded by bodyguards in the distance. I hung back a little when Jody introduced me to Cody because I was suddenly nervous and shy. "Hey, nice to meet you, Randy," said Cody, giving me a big hug. "Nice to meet you too. I'm a huge fan," I said, blushing. "Okay, I'll just take the picture and I'll leave you to it," said Jody. Cody turned so that he was standing beside me and looped his arm around my waist. I blushed and smiled as Jody snapped the picture, while the only thing that was going through my head was, "Oh my gosh, Cody Simpson's touching me." Jody then left and Cody's driver led us to the parking lot. We came to a black SUV. The driver and a bodyguard got in the front, and Cody, my mom, another bodyguard, and I got in the back. Cody sat beside me, and for the first few minutes we didn't talk. I just looked out the window at the LA scenery while my mom chatted with the bodyguard. Cody finally broke the silence and said, "So, how do you like all LA so far?" "Bitch, I just got here." "It's great," I said, smiling, and just like that, it was no longer awkward between us. We just kept talking and we really connected. We talked about his music, his life, his tour, etc. I love how I didn't write out any of this dialogue. Then he said, "Enough about me, tell me about you." So we talked about my life, my friends, my family, my interests, and I was in the middle of telling him how I discovered him when the car slowed to a stop and Cody announced, "We're here." "You'll have to finish telling me that story later," he winked. We stepped out of the car and I looked up at the big, beautiful house in front of us. Okay, we're straight up just staying at his house? What? "Wow," I whispered in awe. Cody chuckled softly. "This is certainly bigger than our house," my mom said. We walked up to the door and Cody opened it and yelled, "We're home." Immediately, Cody's mom appeared through a doorway. She shook my hand and my mom's and said in her Australian accent, okay, let me see if I can do an Australian accent. "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Angie. Welcome to our home." That was terrible. "Come on, follow me, Randy," Cody said softly. I followed him down a long hallway and into a large living room where his sister Allie and his brother Tom were sitting watching Harry Potter. "Hey guys, this is Randy, the winner of the contest," Cody said to them. Allie jumped off the couch and said, "Hey girl, great to meet you," while giving me a hug. "You too," I said, hugging her back and smiling. Tom just glanced up, said, "Hey," and went back to watching the movie. Cody rolled his eyes and said, "Come on, I'll show you my room." Okay, whoa, things moving a little fast here. I followed him up the stairs into his room. He opened the door for me and I walked in and looked around. "Go ahead, make yourself at home," he said, gesturing towards the bed. I sat down and stared at my hands, still not able to believe I was in Cody Simpson's house. He closed the door, came over and sat down on the bed beside me. I looked up and into his eyes, his gorgeous aqua eyes. He looked back into my eyes and smiled, and I blushed so red I thought my face would burst into flames. And I also, I wrote up the author's notes that people would post at the end of their chapter or whatever here. So I wrote, "What will happen next in the bedroom? Dun dun dun." And yes, I did say that just to be a perv. Tongue sticking out face emoji. Again, I'm really sorry this took so long. I have motivational issues. Real as fuck. Plus my computer was being gay. Okay, it was 2011, guys. Keep this in mind. So yeah, I hope you liked and tell me what you think. Absolutely nothing untoward happened in the bedroom in this story. I was like 13 when I wrote this, so I think I was probably too scared to write a sex scene. So yeah, that's all we'll read of that one. Honestly, compared to the fics we're gonna get to after this, I feel like this was actually the least cringe. Okay, now we are getting to a fic that I posted online on fanfiction.net in 2012. This one is not RPF, this is a Pokemon fanfiction, but it does feature a very much self-insert and very much Mary Sue OC. Funny story about the OC for this fic. I don't know if it still exists, but there used to be this like website. It was called like the Mary Sue test or something like that, where basically like you sort of filled out this questionnaire where you like gave all this information about your OC, and it would tell you whether or not you were a Mary Sue. So I did that, and it flagged high on the Mary Sue radar, but I was completely in denial. I was like, oh, I must have just like filled it out wrong. There's no way my character's a Mary Sue. Spoiler alert, she was. So I guess let's read this little summary here. So I titled the fic, I Go Where You Go, Love and Pokemon Battles. Real Pokemon heads know that I Go Where You Go are lyrics from the opening song for one of the Diamond and Pearl anime seasons. I don't remember which one. Okay. Professor Rowan has invited the top 3 strongest young Pokemon trainers, Ash Ketchum, Gary Oak, and Cheyenne Flowers, OC, to Sinnoh to help him with his research. Eventually, a bit of a love triangle forms, based loosely on Pokemon Platinum game, rated T for mild language, violence, and suggestive themes. I do not own Pokemon or the cover photo. From context, Ash Ketchum was basically like my first fictional crush, but then randomly, in like early high school age, I just had this intense autistic hyperfixation with Gary Oak. So that's why I made this like a Ash, Gary Oak, and self-insert OC love triangle. And I set it in Sinnoh because the Gen 4 Pokemon games are my absolute favorite. And I think at this point in time, those were probably the only Pokemon games I had played in their entirety. All right, let's fucking do this, I guess. Cheyenne stepped onto the deck of the ferry and immediately felt a cool sea breeze lift her long, wavy auburn hair. Ooh. She walked over to the edge, gripped the railing, and stared out at the vast aquamarine waves. Apparently I have a thing for aqua. She took a deep breath. The air smelled like salty seawater at New Hope. She was traveling from her hometown of New Bark in the Johto region to Sanjam Town of the Sinnoh region. It was hard to believe only a week ago she had received the letter. She took out said letter, smoothed it out, and reread it for about the 20th time. Dear Miss Cheyenne Flowers, my name is Professor Rowan. I am a Pokemon professor in the Sinnoh region. Recently, I have had my scientists develop a new version of the Pokédex, a device of which I'm sure you are aware. That is where you come in. In order to further my research, I need strong young Pokemon trainers to travel the region and collect as much information as possible on the Pokemon that reside there. If you so desire, I would like for you to travel to Sinnoh as soon as possible to receive the Pokédex and begin your journey. I will also provide you with a Pokemon from my lab. You will not be alone on this journey. I have also invited 2 other trainers to help me with my research. Please respond as quickly as possible. Yours sincerely, Professor Rowan. Cheyenne sighed, folded up the letter, and tucked it back in her pocket, wondering who the other trainers would be. She was quite eager to be leaving Johto. There were too many painful memories there. Traveling Sinnoh would also give her a chance to finally prove to everyone that she was a true Pokemon master. Thinking of this brought her back to one of the events of the past month. I've finally done it, she thought, smiling to herself. I defeated the entire Johto League with only one Pokemon, and now I've beaten the champion, the Dragon Master, Lance. Lance, however, just laughed. An excellent battle, he said. However, I cannot allow you to become champion. Cheyenne's stomach lurched, and the smile was wiped off her face. What? She stammered. You are a very strong trainer, Lance elaborated, but I'm afraid you do not have the skills that a true champion requires. What do you mean? Cheyenne asked desperately, feeling on the verge of tears. Well, for example, you only have one Pokemon, and while your bond with that Pokemon is very strong, most trainers catch many Pokemon and bond with them. If you can go out and create bonds with many different Pokemon and come back here and defeat me again, I will allow you to become champion. Cheyenne didn't know what to say. She had worked so hard, but now she had hit another dead end. She felt utterly crushed, but suddenly that old fiery determination welled up inside of her. Oh, I will, she said. I'll come back here with more Pokemon and beat you again. Cheyenne sighed again. She didn't like thinking about that. Unfortunately, this brought her back to another painful memory. Before she lived in New Barktown, Cheyenne lived in Pallet Town in the Kanto region. There she had a friend named Gary Oak. However, when she was 5 years old, she moved away. The day she moved, Gary promised he would keep in touch with her, but Gary hadn't contacted her in the 10 years since she'd left. Cheyenne had even tried to call him once, but no one answered. Cheyenne shook her head vigorously. Why am I thinking about Gary, she thought. It's been 10 years. I thought I'd finally forgotten about him. Feeling lonely, Cheyenne decided to let her one and only Pokemon, a Meganium, of all Pokemon, okay, out. Come on out, Sheik, she said dully, pressing the button on his Pokeball. Sheik looked happy to be getting some fresh air, but seeing his trainer wasn't, he nuzzled her kindly. She laughed softly and patted him on the head. Suddenly a voice yelled, "Land ho!" Cheyenne and Sheik spun around and looked out onto the horizon. A large island was looming in the distance. Upon seeing this, all traces of sadness left Cheyenne's mind. She smiled and said to her Pokemon, "Ready for a new adventure, buddy?" "Meganium!" said Sheik happily. A few minutes later, with Sheik back in his Pokeball, Cheyenne stepped off the ferry and looked around. She was on a small dock surrounded by a beautiful beach that a few people were milling around. She could see why the town was called Sandgem. In the distance, she could see a row of trees, and beyond that, a cobbled street and some houses. She pulled the map of Sinnoh her dad gave her as a goodbye present out of her bag and looked for Professor Rowan's lab. Luckily, Sandgem was not a large town, and it would not take her very long to walk there. However, there was no way she could have foreseen the surprise that was waiting for her outside. After getting lost and asking for directions a couple times, Cheyenne finally located the lab. As she walked up to it, something strange seemed to be going on outside. She frowned, looking closer. An expensive-looking red convertible was parked right outside the front door. It was full of pretty girls who looked to be a few years older than Cheyenne. As she got closer, she could see that among the girls was a very good-looking boy of about her age. He appeared to be arguing with another boy standing outside the car. For some reason, they both looked familiar. As she drew closer, she could hear their conversation. "I can't believe I have to travel with you again," yelled the boy outside the car angrily. He had spiky black hair and was wearing a backwards-facing baseball cap. "Speak for yourself! You'll just slow me down," said the other boy in a sneering voice. He had spiky brown hair and narrow eyes and had his arm slung around the girl sitting closest to him. He looked almost bored. They were so busy fighting that they didn't even notice Cheyenne approach until she cleared her throat and everyone, including the girls, looked around. Cheyenne blushed. The boy in the car smiled arrogantly and said, "Oh, hello, are you another one of my adoring fans?" The girls around him giggled. Cheyenne raised an eyebrow. No, I'm here to see Professor Rowan," she said, already not liking this boy. "Oh, you must be the third trainer," exclaimed the black-haired boy, the pissed-off expression on his face fading. "I'm Ash Ketchum from Pallet." He extended his hand to her. Suddenly, Cheyenne knew why he looked familiar. Shortly after she and Gary became friends, a boy their age named Ash Ketchum moved into the house next door. He was very shy and never talked to Cheyenne or Gary, but instead followed them around and watched them play from a distance. He was also a very famous Pokemon trainer, and in the years since she'd left Pallet, Cheyenne had heard a lot about him on TV. "Ash?" she said slowly. He looked confused for a moment, then comprehension dawned on his face. Hey, I know you. You're Cheyenne Flowers, Cheyenne finished, smiling. Wow, I can't believe you're here. I didn't think I'd ever see you again, Ash exclaimed. Likewise, smiled Cheyenne. Then she realized something else as she turned towards the boy in the car, who hadn't been listening to the exchange between Ash and Cheyenne and was instead talking to his girls. Wait, if you're Ash, then he must be. Yup, that's Gary, said Ash, sounding slightly annoyed. Cheyenne's heart skipped a beat and her mouth dropped open. What about me? Asked Gary lazily. Gary, don't you remember me? Asked Cheyenne hesitantly. The fucking adverbs, dude. Give it a break. For a moment, Gary's eyes widened and his lips parted, but then he looked away and said in that same arrogant voice, What are you talking about? I don't know you. His girls laughed. Cheyenne's heart plummeted. Asshole, Ash muttered, just loud enough for Gary to hear. Come on, he said to Cheyenne, grabbing her hand and pulling her towards the front door of Professor Rowan's lab. Cheyenne's heart jumped and she blushed. Up close, she noticed Ash was pretty cute too, but in a different way than Gary. He let go of her hand and said, Don't listen to him. He does remember you. He's just trying to act cool for his cheerleaders. He rolled his eyes. Yeah, said Cheyenne somewhat distractedly, as she was still thinking about Ash's hand in hers. I guess we'd better go in now, said Ash, turning and knocking on the door. It opened by itself. Ash and Cheyenne exchanged a look and stepped over the threshold. They found themselves in a large room full of scientists working on various types of machinery and computers. Suddenly, Cheyenne felt a wave of nostalgia. This lab was almost identical to Professor Elm's lab back in Johto, and Cheyenne could clearly remember this day 5 years ago when she had stood in that lab, ready to receive her very first Pokemon and begin her adventure. This also reminded her that today would be the day that her 10-year-old sister Skylar would be getting her Pokemon license. Cheyenne was lifted out of her thoughts by a voice saying, Are you the trainers here to help Professor Rowan? A balding man wearing a long white lab coat and brown glasses was hurrying towards them. Yes, Ash responded. Right this way, said the man. They followed him across the room and through a door on the opposite side. They were in an office with a large window and various pictures of Pokemon on the walls. The trainers are here, sir, said the scientist to a formidable-looking old man with white hair and mustache sitting at a desk. Ah yes, thank you, Dr. Honda, said the old man, standing up. Dr. Honda bowed and left the room, closing the door behind him. Greetings, Ash, Cheyenne, said Professor Rowan, but where is Gary? As if on cue, they heard a door burst open and Gary's cocky voice yelling, Where's the prof? Professor Rowan sighed and said in an undertone, His grandfather warned me about him, but I didn't think he'd be this bad. Seconds later, the door was flung wide, revealing several annoyed-looking scientists in the room beyond until Gary slammed the door. Yo, what did I miss? He said, loudly and rudely. Ash and Cheyenne glared at him, and Professor Rowan cleared his throat, looking at him disapprovingly. Well, now that we have you all here, began Rowan, my mission for you is simply to go out and travel this region with my Pokedexes and collect information on the Pokemon that live here. Once you have done so, you must report back to me. Here are your Pokedexes. He handed each of them a shiny, modern-looking Pokedex. If you wish, you may also face this region's gym leaders and Pokemon League, as I'm sure it will be a valuable training experience for all of you. And one more thing, Rowan said quickly, as Gary opened his mouth. Lately, I've been hearing rumors of an evil organization known as Team Galactic, who seek to exploit Pokemon. I don't know exactly what their plans are, but if you do come across them, I want you to do whatever you can to stop them. The three teenagers nodded grimly. Well, I believe that is all. Oh, and your Pokemon. Professor Rowan pulled out a briefcase, opened it, and offered it to them. It contained 3 Pokeballs. Gary immediately grabbed the first one he saw without even thinking about it. I haven't even told you what they are yet, but if that's the one you want, so be it. You've got Turtwig. The other 2 are Piplup and Chimchar, said Rowan, pointing them out. After pondering it for a moment, Cheyenne decided on Piplup. That left Ash with Chimchar. Cheyenne pressed the button on the center of the Pokeball and a small blue penguin Pokemon popped out. It said, looking up at its new trainer endearingly. Aw, it's so cute, exclaimed Cheyenne, hugging it. Looks kinda weak to me, said Gary skeptically, examining his new turtwig. In retaliation, it bit his hand. Ow! Damn it! Yelled Gary, rubbing his hand and glaring at his Pokemon. Ash snorted. It won't be weak if you train it properly, dipshit, he said. Isn't that right, buddy? He patted Chimchar on the head. Chimchar! It said happily. Hey, I don't need a weakling like you to tell me how to, Gary started. Enough arguing, Professor Rowan said suddenly, making all three of them jump. It's getting late. Why don't you get something to eat and stay at the Pokemon Center tonight? You can make your way towards Jubilife City tomorrow morning. Wait a second, said Gary slowly, returning his Pokemon to its Pokeball. Are you saying we have to travel together? Well, of course, said Professor Rowan, his nostrils flaring. It makes the most sense, after all. What? No way! Those two will just slow me down, said Gary indignantly. Gary had touched a nerve. Cheyenne whipped around to face him. For your information, I'm actually a really good Pokemon trainer, she yelled. Yeah, more like you'll slow us down, added Ash. If you prefer, I could take the Pokedexes away and send you all straight home, said Rowan coldly, staring down at them with a stony facial expression. All three trainers immediately fell silent, although they continued to glare at each other angrily. That's better. Now good night to you. Ash sighed resignedly and led the way out of the room. As soon as they closed the door behind them, the scientist from before came hurrying towards them again. Got your Pokedexes? He said excitedly. My son and daughter, Lucas and Dawn, are helping the professor with his research as well. They left yesterday, so perhaps you'll run into them. We'll keep an eye out, said Ash tiredly, making Cheyenne realize how tired she was. She stifled a yawn. It had been a long day. They stepped outside into the setting sun. Gary's convertible was still sitting there. Looks like we won't be able to travel together, girls, he said melodramatically to his cheerleaders. They immediately made noises of sadness and protest, and one even burst into tears. Ash shook his head and made his way towards the Pokemon Center. Cheyenne scurried after him. What shitty luck I have to travel with him again, said Ash, shoving his hands in his pockets and kicking at a rock angrily. When did he become such a jerk? He was so nice when we were friends. Cheyenne wondered aloud. Yeah, well, that was a long time ago, said Ash in an unnaturally aggressive tone of voice. Cheyenne stared at him. He stopped and then turned to her. At least I have you, he said quietly, smiling. Later that night, lying in the Pokemon Center's bed, Cheyenne had difficulty sleeping. Part of the problem was Gary's loud snoring, but mostly it was because her mind just wouldn't shut down. She kept thinking about what Ash had said. At least I have you. That made it sound like he liked her. Do I like him? She thought. I don't really know him very well, but he seems nice. Nicer than Gary, that's for sure. Another thing she just couldn't understand was why Gary had changed so much. Ash was right. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, but she never could have guessed he would turn out like this. Oh well, she thought, growing drowsy at last. As Mom always says, only time will tell. And then I have another author's note here. Wow, this is a really long chapter, but thanks so much for reading it. This is going to be a Gary XOC fic with a little bit of Ash XOC and Ash X Misty. Sorry I didn't update for so long, I've been really busy with school and shit. Thanks so much to the people who read and reviewed the last chapter. I hope you like this one. Yeah. No notes, I guess. Alright, moving on to the next one. This one I wrote in 2014, so I think I was in grade 12. And at this point, I was deep into my K-pop obsession. So this is K-pop RPF. At this point, I wasn't so much into the self-insert OCs or literally just writing myself into fics. This was in my Fujo era, okay? So this is two members of a K-pop boy group shipped together. So my favorite group at the time was EXO. And so this pairing is Chansu, which is Chanyeol and Kyungsu. So yeah, this one was just a one-shot, so it's just one chapter. So technically I did finish it. I think it was based off of a prompt I found on Tumblr, but this link here doesn't work anymore, so I can't see the actual prompt. But, yeah. Here we go, I guess. Kyung-soo pushes his round glasses up the bridge of his nose. I don't know why, but for some reason writing in present tense bothers me. I always write in the past tense now. I don't know why I wrote this in present tense. He looks up from the laptop screen and the essay he has been trying to write for the past 3 hours. Real as fuck. He sits back in his chair and gazes around the small, neat room, taking in the comforting familiarity. It's been a while since he has been able to visit home. The university coursework has been starting to get pretty heavy. He stares absent-mindedly out the large window in front of his desk, breathing in the smell of his mother's delicious cooking and smiling slightly. He flexes his fingers, about to return to the keyboard when something catches his eye. There is someone in his neighbor's backyard, which he has a clear view into. Someone he has never seen before. The person is a young man of about Kyung-soo's age. Kyung-soo remembers his parents telling him that the grandson of the elderly couple next door has recently moved in with them. This must be him. The boy is moving about the backyard, raking up fallen leaves. Kyung-soo smiles again, resting his chin on his hand and thinking about how nice it is that this boy is helping his grandparents out with the yard work. Before long, the boy has a sizable pile of leaves and Kyung-soo does a double take. He is jumping in it. This grown man is jumping in a pile of leaves like Kyung-soo used to do when he was 5 years old. Kyung-soo cannot believe his eyes. Without realizing it, he is standing with his nose pressed against the window, mouth agape. Then, without warning, the boy looks directly at Kyung-soo's bedroom window. Kyung-soo's heart skips a beat, and he quickly ducks down under the desk, blushing and confused. Kyung-soo stands shivering slightly in the chilly autumn air, admiring how pretty the street he grew up on looks drenched in the gold of the weak morning light. He quickly retrieves the mail from the box at the end of his driveway and begins to shuffle back towards the warmth of his house, pulling the sleeves of his hoodie down over his hands. He has not taken more than 3 steps when he freezes in his tracks. Exiting the house adjacent is a tall, handsome boy of around Kyung-soo's age, the Leaf Boy from the day before. Kyung-soo reddens and proceeds more quickly towards his front door, praying Leaf Boy won't notice him. If only he had better luck. "Hey," Leaf Boy calls out, perhaps a bit more loudly than is necessary. Okay, one thing you have to know about, like, K-pop fanfiction, or really just K-pop fandom in general, is that, like, every idol would have this, like, one thing or this one trait that everyone associated with them and, like, exaggerated the fuck out of it. So with Chanyeol, that was him being, like loud and, like, boisterous. Even though I would bet that in real life he's, like, probably not even like that at all. So I was definitely doing that in this fic. Kyung-soo is about 5 steps from his front porch and wonders if he should pretend he didn't hear and make a run for it. But it's too late. Leaf Boy is coming over. "Hey," he says again as he approaches Kyung-soo, who refuses to make eye contact. "About yesterday. I saw you watching me. You probably think I'm really weird. But I promise I have a completely logical explanation for it. You see, my grandparents are really old and they can't do much around the house anymore, so I thought I would be a good grandkid and help out, and..." He rambles on, again much too loudly considering their proximity. Kyung-soo wishes he would shut up and leave him in peace. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Kyung-soo cuts in a monotone voice. For a moment, the other boy seems taken aback, but then he smiles a much too big smile. In fact, everything about him is too big, from his ears to his feet to his deep, booming voice. Not to mention his height, he positively towers over tiny Kyung-soo. "Ah, of course," he says, and Kyung-soo can tell he doesn't believe him. Kyung-soo stands there awkwardly, wondering what to do next when the other boy says, "Oh, how rude of me. I haven't even introduced myself yet. I'm Park Chanyeol." He sticks out a large hand. "Do Kyung-soo," Kyung-soo mumbles, briefly shaking Chanyeol's hand. Chanyeol is still smiling. "You should come roll around in a leaf pile with me sometime." Absolutely insane sentence. It's lots of fun and great for relieving stress. Kyung-soo looks into his face for the first time in surprise and blinks his round eyes at him. "No thanks," he stutters, feeling his cheeks start to turn pink. "I'm too busy." He turns away to escape this embarrassing conversation when Chanyeol says, "Your glasses are cute, by the way." Kyung-soo practically runs inside the house and slams the door, trying to fight the heat rising in his face and the butterflies fluttering in his belly. Kyung-soo removes his glasses and rubs his temples, trying to ease the pain pounding through his skull. It is late afternoon now, and he has made little progress on his essay, the deadline for which is looming ever nearer. He is beginning to feel the all-too-familiar pangs of panic in the way his heart pounds and his palms sweat. He is so consumed by the anxious thoughts swirling around his head that he jumps when there is a soft knock on his bedroom door. "Come in," he calls, and his mother enters. "Kyung-soo, there's someone here for you." "Someone here for me?" Kyung-soo returns his glasses to his face and furrows his brow. "What do you mean?" "A man, at the door, looking for you." Kyung-soo's mother is wearing an oddly knowing smile. Puzzled, he rises from his chair and makes his way downstairs. He almost falls down the last few steps because none other than Park Chan-yeol is standing in his front hall, wearing his usual ridiculous grin. "Good afternoon, Kyung-soo," he says brightly. Kyung-soo just gazes up at him in astonishment. "Your mother told me you're working on an essay. How's it going?" "Not very good, actually," Kyung-soo mumbles, now staring at the floor and trying to surreptitiously wipe his sweating, shaking hands on his jeans. I love how I just, gave characters in my fics debilitating social anxiety because, I have debilitating social anxiety. "I know what you need," Chan-yeol declares. "Grab your jacket and follow me." Kyung-soo desperately tries to make up some excuse not to go with him, but his mother, who has appeared behind him, says, "Go, you need a break." A few minutes later, Kyung-soo is standing in Chan-yeol's grandparents' backyard, blinking in the brightness of the setting sun. Being around Chan-yeol makes him nervous for some reason, but he also feels a strange sense of contentment. The air is brisk, and he shivers as he watches Chan-yeol emerge from the shed carrying 2 rakes. Kyung-soo raises an eyebrow at him as he draws nearer. "I was serious about my invitation earlier," Chan-yeol says as he hands Kyung-soo one of the rakes. "No, I refuse. There is no way you'll get me to do that," Kyung-soo says, although he's not sure if he really means it. "Why not?" Chan-yeol asks teasingly. "I don't want to make a fool out of myself," Kyung-soo responds. "No one's here to see it but me. One of the neighbors could be watching through the window like I was yesterday. So you were spying on me." Chan-yeol flashes his teeth once again. "I wasn't spying on you," Kyung-soo sputters, growing flustered. "I was just..." He is silenced by a sudden burst of dried leaves in his face. He sputters and swipes at them. As his vision clears, he sees Chan-yeol laughing loudly and staring at him expectantly. Chan-yeol's look turns to one of terror when he sees Kyung-soo's darkened facial expression. "You're gonna regret that," Kyung-soo says in a deathly low voice. Chan-yeol's already round eyes widen even more as he turns and begins to run away. He doesn't make it more than a few steps before Kyung-soo is upon him, shoving a fistful of leaves down the back of his hoodie. They carry on like this for some time, and Kyung-soo is surprised to feel the tenseness leaving his shoulders and the pounding in his head receding. After they have made an even bigger mess of the backyard, they get down to raking, chatting as they go. Chan-yeol asks him questions about himself, and Kyung-soo tells him all about university and the assignment he's been struggling with. Chan-yeol in turn reveals that he attends the same university and that he is living with his grandparents since he is from another town. They scrape crunchy leaves into the growing pile in silence for a few minutes before Kyung-soo voices something he has been wondering since the encounter this morning. "Chan-yeol," he begins quietly. Chan-yeol stops raking and looks up. "Why did you ask me to do this? If someone had witnessed me doing something as embarrassing as what you were doing, I'd probably avoid them for the rest of my life." Chan-yeol smiles once again and adds some more leaves to the pile. "Because I love making people happy. I live for it. And you looked like you needed to be made happy." Kyung-soo smiles slightly at the ground and steps on a particularly crunchy leaf, reveling in the fact that people as nice as Chan-yeol do exist. "Also, I think you're cute," Chan-yeol adds, looking at Kyung-soo and grinning. Kyung-soo's heart leaps and he bows his head and busies himself with the rake to hide his intense blush. A few minutes later, Kyung-soo and Chan-yeol stand back, admiring the large pile of leaves they have made. Chan-yeol shoots a sideways glance at Kyung-soo and grins. "Are you ready?" he asks. Without waiting for an answer, he launches himself into the pile. Kyung-soo hesitates, but Chan-yeol grabs him and drags him down. Kyungsoo yells and shoves a fistful of leaves into Chanyeol's face, several of which enter his mouth. They spend the next few minutes like this, rolling around and throwing leaves at each other. Before long, they are covered in leaves, out of breath, and giggling, and the yard's a mess once more. Kyungsoo is exhilarated, his head swimming slightly as he stares into Chanyeol's puppy dog eyes. After a while, Chanyeol says softly, "Can I kiss you?" Kyungsoo's heart skips several beats and he blushes furiously. He removes his glasses, hands fumbling, and begins to clean them on his shirt, an old nervous habit. He gives his head a tiny nod. Slowly, Chanyeol takes his glasses from him and leans in. Kyungsoo's heart is racing now. But as soon as Chanyeol's lips touch his, everything slows down. All worries dissolve from his mind like fog in sunlight. When Chanyeol pulls away, he is smiling more widely than ever. Kyungsoo grins shyly back. "Haha, your face is really red," Chanyeol points out. "Shut up," Kyungsoo says, somehow managing to go even more red and shoving yet more leaves in the larger boy's face. Posted at 9:37, girl, go to class. But yeah, so that was that. I actually, if I can say this, I don't think the writing in this one was too bad. The cringiness was probably just the fact that it was K-pop RPF and that I was like kind of oohifying these grown-ass men. But you know, that's just how it was at the time. But yeah, that's all the fan fiction that I have for y'all today. I hope you enjoyed this secondhand cringe. No, I will not be revealing my current AO3 username. But yeah, let me know if you have ever written cringy fan fiction in the past. I would love to hear about it. Also, if you notice that the quality in this video looks a little bit better, it's because I got a real camera and I no longer have to film with my poverty iPhone. And if I sounded weird at all in this video, it's because I'm getting over a cold, so I apologize for that. Yeah, and I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm working on another video that will hopefully be out later this month. And thanks again for supporting my channel. Let's get to 100K next. I think that's when you get the first YouTube play button, so that'll be exciting if I'm able to reach that. All right, I'm gonna shut up now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.